of ESPN, covers the Jets, wrote this on ESPN.com, and it's had a lot of attention on Sunday. The Jets will have to address their wide receiver issue with a high draft pick, unless another Tyreek Hill situation arises. A handful of receivers are entering the final year of their rookie deal: Metcalf, A.J. Brown, and Deebo Samuel. The market's blowing up, and that might make it harder for their teams to re-sign them. The Jets have ties to all three. The coaching staff knows Samuel from their time in San Francisco. To say the coaches have an affinity for Samuel would be an understatement. At this point, there's no indication that any of them are available, but the Jets are just keeping an eye on situations just in case. Know this, it's harder for a fourth-year player to force a trade compared to an older, more expensive player like Tyreek, but hey, you never know. The Jets traded Jamal Adams after 3 years, didn't they? So that is the report, and I think the first reaction that I've seen is one of two things. Let's engage in this, or let's dismiss it because it's stupid to think about. And, we are of the mind that I don't expect Deebo Samuel to get traded here, but I do think I didn't expect other guys to get traded. A year or two ago, you wouldn't have expected Davante Adams to play for anybody, especially in his prime, but the Green Bay Packers. And we are in March still. This month, Amari Cooper, Davante Adams, Robert Woods, Hinchard, and Tyreek Hill have all been traded.
Yeah, I think one thing that the two superstar guys that have in common that happened, I guess, really over – Davante feels, less than a week ago, but it was probably a little more than that. The last 10 days, you've seen Davante and Tyreek. Both the guys spent second contracts on their first team. Now, we can argue, I think money's all relative, and you've brought up the numbers before. One guy was like 51 and the other guy was like 59. But I bet at the time that they got the extension to those guys, to the league, that felt like pretty big contract extensions for both guys, especially Davante. Tyreek, had some off the field, just question marks, but still, obviously the numbers that just got passed out to those two guys again are historically large, right? They are more money per year than any other position, but they're not more money than they get talked about like the biggest deals ever. Myles Garrett, but Joey Bosa fucking blew by both those two deals, right? It's Aaron Donald, Khalil Mack, still however many years later, what year would that have been? 17, 87, and 90. So like Tyreek Hill, who got this deal that if you just look on Twitter, he got paid like he's Steph Curry or whatever, doesn't even sniff Aaron Donald's deal that now is a joke deal, right? Or Khalil Mack's deal from 2017. So I think average per year is a little overrated. Now maybe a guy like Parag or Howie would argue that, and I'm sure they would have legitimate takes because depending on specific years, like the average per year does matter, and it definitely matters to probably the narrative around contract negotiations with other players.
Yeah.
But I would imagine the number that truly, like, the owners, like, part of what made the Jimmy Haslam signing off on that contract is, like, you truly guaranteed $230 million. Even if the signing bonus is $60, you have to put that lump sum of cash into escrow. Like, ultimately, Mark Davis had to have $67 million, not $149, right? And Stephen Ross, the 72 or 73 or 75, I see different numbers, but a little over 70 for Tyreek Hill. I just get back to the three names that you're seeing, while they are those two contracts dramatically upped their value, because all three guys are studs. They've all had enormous moments. They've played in a combined Deebo 6, AJ 5, and DK 3 playoff games. They've been in enormous games. That's not even counting their regular season games. When you're in playoff teams, you're playing in huge regular season games and then the playoff games. So these guys, I've seen them in their big moments. They all can dominate. They've been to a combined true 3 Pro Bowls. Combined. As we said last week, those guys have consecutive 11. So I do think the way they're talked about, and I get what Rich is saying, and I get the way social media is saying it, we have to put these three guys, who all three of them have awesome attributes. We'll get into like how you'd rank them, but all three of them are elite, difference-making players at the highest level. I mean, DK has had some moments in this league, because I think he's going to be ranked probably last by the average fan, that are pretty mind-blowingly, incredibly jaw-dropping if you watched it on your couch, right?
Yeah.
He was the most famous of these groups 4 years ago when his shirt was coming off. You're like, no, this guy, and then he lived up to the hype immediately. So I just think we need to pump the brakes on the amount of money that people think all three of them are going to get. Like, I think the teams are probably more confident where the number's going to come around than I think the outside noise.
Yeah, I also think as it relates to this particular story, the more people that know you, because if you know somebody and you like somebody, you are more inclined to, uh, want to be around that person than somebody that doesn't know them, right? That's a very obvious, basic thing. If you like someone, you're more willing to maybe pay them more money or be a little biased. It's the simplest way to put it, in your evaluation of them. And the more coaches around the league that coached the 49ers, and now there are, staffs, two more staffs this year than there were last year, or coaches that coached against Deebo Samuel, like Kevin O'Connell now in the Vikings. The more teams the more coaching staffs around the league that are coaching staffs are somehow connected to Deebo Samuel, the more places that might be willing to pay him more than the 49ers are willing to pay him. The 49ers might really be willing. I think that's part of this is like, and we saw it with Devontae here, where the Packers were willing to pay Devontae the same amount of money that the Raiders were willing to pay Devontae. But Devontae wanted to be somewhere else. The more places that are willing to pay you as much money as your team is willing to pay you, you know it and your agent knows it, the more likely it is that you end up on another team. Now, again, I don't think Deebo's about to get traded to the Jets or traded anywhere for that matter, but there's 1 year left on his deal. And if the Niners are offering him a reasonable contract of, let's say it's what we think would be even reasonable plus $58 million guaranteed, right? We talked about it the other day based on his history. Now, if he's this player that he is right now for the next 3 years, that's not crazy at all. But let's say it's 60. Let's say 60. Let's say somebody's willing to make him the highest paid receiver in the league and he knows it. But the Niners are willing to offer him $58 million. What happens if he doesn't sign 58 because he wants somebody else to pay him 75?
I think there's a big difference in even Devontae and Tyreek Hill. Devontae had been around that group since 14, so they've had ebb and flows. And same with Tyreek Hill. In the peak of their powers, under no circumstances are those two teams capitulating. Like, at the end of the day, this ain't the NBA. This is the NFL. Those two teams gave in because they were both willing to. And obviously, like you said, the Packer situation was way different in Tyreek. They would not have done this either team 4 years ago. Like, to me, the 49ers aren't in capitulation mode yet. Just like, oh, yeah, he's not happy. We'll just let him on his merry way and let some other team. Like, that ain't happening, right? Part of it was like those other teams, but specifically the Chiefs, who to me would parallel the Niners situation if they ultimately wanted to pull the trigger. The Chiefs were willing to part ways. Like, I don't think the Niners, are in the mode yet of like, yeah, we'll let it get ugly. we'll argue a little bit. Like, contract negotiations at the highest level, TJ Watt, the Steelers in a million years. When I think the Steelers, I think TJ Watt is like, represents everything they've been our entire life. It's like, it got ugly. It got weird.
Yeah.
That's life. I mean, that's the situation.
The other unique situation here, which is, but I guess Kansas City was this way too. Kansas City, you could argue, was the best place for Tyreek Hill. Right? Like, if you're Deebo, being with Kyle Shanahan on the 49ers is a pretty good situation to be in. We just saw it last year. But what if privately you're telling your agent, hey, man, I don't want to run the ball 8 times a game. I don't want to play that way. That's not good for my body. That's not who I am. I'll do it. I did it last year. I don't want to be that guy.
He did keep saying it and taking pride, call himself a wide back.
100%. Again, I'm not saying any of those things are what's happening. I just think ultimately the situation, if we removed all the names from it, there's a receiver on the last year of his contract who wants to get paid a lot of money and might not be valued financially by his team as much as he thinks he should be valued, and somebody else really likes him and has a lot of draft picks. That's a story that's a real story in the NFL. Now, I don't think this one's going to happen, but again, I didn't think Devontae was about to leave.